continue on with what Officer Causey was talking about, like phone scams are basically what most of these top 10 scams are, but just to give you a brief introduction, I'm Greg Topolski, and I am associated with the organization. It's called the ACFE. It's the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, and our goal is to reduce the incident of fraud and white-collar crime. And one of the ways that we do that is through talks like this, where we come out into the community and help people understand what the threats that they're facing. And this is, like he was saying, phone scams are a huge threat to not just elderly people, but everybody in the US. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry for scammers. They make tons of money doing this, and the reason is because it works, and they're very good at it. So, and what our job is to catch these people. Now, mostly in my day job, I do this as in a corporate environment, but a lot of the fraud in the US happens to regular people like us. And I talk to people just within my family, with friends I know, and they are fooled by these scams just as easily as anybody else. But they especially like to target elderly people for a lot of reasons, but the main reasons is people, as they get older, they're not quite as good with technology, so they don't really understand. It's easier for them to get confused about things when people call them, and they're just easy targets. But trust me, this can happen. These things happen to everybody. I've gotten calls. I think you've also had calls. I mean, all this stuff it's preventable, but it can be very intimidating when you're in a call. So what these top 10 scams are, there's a committee called the U.S. Senate Committee on Aging, and what they did was they set up a fraud hotline for people to call into to get, if they experienced a fraud themselves, if something happened to them, they call this hotline, and this hotline will give them information on how they can protect themselves and what they need to do next. So it's a free service to all of us. I put the number on the next page in big bold letters. So if any of these things happen to you, even if you don't get scammed, you call that number and you report it. Now, you can see the number of complaints they get is not a lot, so they're always kind of available. So it's kind of cool. It's paid for by us, so you call this number. I called them a couple of times just to talk to them, and they are very willing to help, because I think that this isn't very well known, and it helps them, for people to call. But they also can track down people. On some of these scams that people have called the hotline, and the hotline has gotten them in touch with the various organizations that help prevent and protect people, and they've tracked down the scammers and prosecuted them. So, which is really cool, right? So we can just run through these scams real quick, and I can give you some tips on how you can avoid being scammed by them. The first one is the IRS impersonation scam. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but it's pretty well publicized. Basically, it's somebody calls you and says they're from the IRS, and they demand payment. And they're like, you need to pay your tax bill right now, otherwise we're going to send an officer to come arrest you. So this is all lies. The IRS generally does not call people. Yeah, exactly. So what they do, what these scammers are, they're very good. They can spoof a number. So if you have caller ID, which I'm assuming everybody has caller ID, they can make it say from the IRS. And so it looks like a legitimate call. So you're like, uh-oh, the IRS is calling me, I better answer it. But the IRS is never going to call you. They just don't have the manpower. They will outsource collections, but what the IRS does before any of that happens is you're going to get multiple letters from the IRS saying, you owe us money, you're behind, and it's only after multiple communications do you ever get a call from anybody, and they're not even affiliated with the IRS, they're just a collection agency, but you get a letter, basically, and then they'll call. But the number one thing is the IRS is never going to demand payment from anybody. What they're going to do is they're going to tell you, if they do call you, or if you get a letter, they're going to tell you what you owe, and then the process for how you can dispute that. The IRS has an appeal process because lots of people get audited, so they have to have that. Tax law is very tricky, so you they need to give you a chance to advocate for your side. But anyway, so the IRS is never going to demand payment. Especially what happens a lot is these fraudsters will call up and say, I need you to pay right away, and I need you to pay right now. And they've convinced people to go and buy iTunes gift cards to pay for this IRS bill, which makes no sense, right? But it's very easy for, like, if you think the IRS is calling you or the government and if anybody, people get scared and they go and make these payments. So yeah, but the bottom line is, just to Officer Causey's point, is just if somebody calls you and you don't think that it makes sense, just hang up. That's the simplest thing. Just hang up the phone. And the IRS has multiple numbers you can call. They have a hotline, which I put in this packet on the last page. You can call them if you're concerned that you actually have a tax bill. Just call them up and they will tell you. So anyway, that brings us to number 2, which is robocalls, which plagues everybody. They're very annoying, right? So basically, it's just somebody calling you, whether it's legitimate or not. A lot of times, unfortunately, there are legitimate calls that they're companies. They may be unsavory, but telemarketing is allowed in the U.S. So the first thing you should do is put your number on the do not call registry. If put your landline, you have an internet phone, or if you have a cell phone, put it on there. Now, legitimate companies have to respect that. They'll look at that and they'll say, okay, I can't call this person. But obviously scammers don't care about that. So they're just gonna keep calling you anyway. So yeah, do not call. So you gotta put your number on that first. And if you are being plagued by calls, I mean, officer already gave us some good tips. Just don't answer it if you don't recognize the number. Don't answer, don't pick up. If you happen to, don't give them any personal information, just hang up. But to protect yourself, another thing you can do is all the carriers will allow you to block numbers. There's a process for that. You just go into your settings. But I will tell you the easiest thing to do is go into your retail store, Verizon, AT&T, whoever, have them show you how to do it. They all know how to do that stuff. That's one way. And if you have an iPhone or any smartphone, you can download apps. There's one called No Mo Robo, which is free, and it will allow you to block known scam numbers. So that's a handy tool to have. Just get the app. There's multiple ones. AT&T has one, but they all have an app. You can pay for ones, but I think No Mo Robo is the one that's very popular, and people use that one, and it's effective. So, but that's what you can do to protect yourself up front. On the back end, don't answer any unknown numbers. Let it go to voicemail. And then if you do happen to answer because somehow you just thought maybe you recognize the number, give out 0 personal information. If they demand payment, if they have some wild story about how you owe money, you just figure out if it sounds legitimate, hang up, call back. Call the actual company that they're saying they are, like, for example, the IRS. So just to kind of run through the rest of these so I don't take up too much time, is the sweepstakes scam, Jamaican lottery scam. It's a variation of an unsolicited call, but you can get this through an email or a telephone call. It's called the Jamaican lottery scam because they spoof the numbers from Jamaica, and what they say is, you've won the lottery. All you have to do is pay a processing fee to collect your reward. Something like that. It's a scam. Nobody is ever going to call you or send you an email saying you won anything. It's just, but people fall for it, so you just have to arm yourself. Just realize if something comes to you and it's too good to be true, probably is. Just delete. And just don't even contact them, because once they get you on the hook, once they start talking to you, they're very tricky, and they may not even get you to pay anything, but they might get personal information out of you. They might say, hey, I know you're not interested, but tell me your social security number or something, which is a big no-no. You never want to do that, but it happens. The next one is, I think, the computer tech support scam is something that plagues everybody, but it's especially tricky for people who are not computer savvy. What this scam is someone from claiming to be from Microsoft or whoever calls you and says, I've noted that your computer has a virus. And people who don't know computers are like, maybe it does. and then they ask for access to your computer, which is the worst thing you can do is to let them have access to your computer, because once they have that, they can put all sorts of malware, they can put all sorts of things on your computer, to where if you check your balances online, they can get your keystrokes and go into your bank account and just steal money. So one thing that they do, there's a couple variations of computer tech scams, but probably the most common one is if you're surfing the internet and you get a pop-up that says beep beep, you have a virus, and you click on that, then you've probably downloaded some sort of virus, something that is bad for your computer. Even worse, people call the number that they give on there, and then that person convinces them that yes, they do have a problem, and then you have to pay a service fee of like say $50 a month or something like that, and they'll keep your computer running. It's all a scam. Number one, Microsoft and computer tech companies are not going to call you ever. They're just not going to do it. It's not what they do. If you do have a problem, what you should do is one, don't trust anything on the internet. Take your computer to a reputable dealer, or call the number on your computer receipt if you have one, or if you have like a legitimate antivirus software, call that number. And that's another point is, for your computer stuff, you should always have your antivirus stuff up to date. So the thing I would do is go to like a Best Buy or something like that and buy it in the box. Usually it's just a download that you go to a website. They don't sell CDs anymore, but what I would do is get that virus stuff, or take your computer to somebody that is a reputable person, or if you have somebody in your family that knows computers, get them to look at it.
Or the Geek Squad.
The Geek Squad, call the Geek Squad. But yeah, so you don't want to trust anybody that calls you. That's generally a scam. Grandparent scam, I think you touched on this scam already. It's when somebody calls you and says, I have your son, your daughter, or whatever in jail. You need to pay a fine immediately to get them out, or something along those lines, where they pretend to be somebody in your family. The easiest thing for this type of prevention is just ask questions, or hang up if you believe it's a scam. But ask questions if you're legitimately concerned that only family members would know. That'll tip you off. Another thing that you can do is have a family plan. Talk with people in your family. Like if somebody did happen to get arrested, or whatever, something they got into trouble, have like a known thing that you're going to do. So that one's prevalent, but not that much. So romance scams is a big one in North Carolina. So I put the top 5 from North Carolina on the side. But romance scams these are really tricky to prevent. Basically what this is somebody is preying on somebody's loneliness through a dating website, or like Facebook or whatever. So what these con men will do is they'll get in close with you. They will try to pretend like they want to be your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. And it takes months and months and months. But eventually what ends up happening when you know it's a scam is they say, hey, I really want to come see you. I just need X amount of money to come and visit you, or something along those lines. And people end up paying it because they're lonely. They want to trust the person that they think is in love with them. I just read an interesting article about this guy in Atlanta who had multiple families. But what he did was he found this lady on a website, and he claimed that he was a multimillionaire and he wanted to move to the Atlanta area. And so they met, and they had like a whirlwind romance. They were getting married within a week, which is pretty crazy, right? So then they started house shopping, and as they were, they found a house they wanted to buy, a multi-million-dollar house, and he was like, hey, I need you to give me half of the down payment so I can, buy this house. $80,000. She gave it to him. Bye-bye. He was gone. But they caught him. That's the good thing. He had done this to multiple people all throughout the Southeast, and they caught him in Tennessee, and he got arrested. And it was because the woman that was scammed called the police, and she reported it. What happens a lot of times with romance scams, it's embarrassing. You get scammed out of money, nobody wants to report that, so they don't. But this person did, and they ended up catching him, which is awesome because when you get those people, con men are the worst. I mean, they prey on your emotions. So it makes me angry. The Social Security impersonation scam is just another variation of the IRS scam. Basically, I'm sure you guys know this. They just reissued Social Security cards. So what happened was a lot of con men figured this out, and so they started calling elderly people saying, "Hey, you got a new Social Security card coming. You just need $10, $15 to get it issued to you." It happened, and people fell for it. So, but basically, the Social Security Administration is not going to call you. They just don't have that budget, or they would never do that. So this one's pretty easy. If you do get a call, or if you think it is, you just hang up and call them, and never give your Social Security to anybody over the phone. It's just just not something you want to do. You just never know. Impending lawsuit scam. This is similar to the grandparent scam, and it's kind of a new thing that has happened in the last year or two. What this is, someone will call you up and say, "We've sent you multiple notices. You need to pay this fine, otherwise police are coming."
Yeah.
Coming and get you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You just come round.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and all of that is a scam. So, yes, it's usually if you're getting a summons from a court, it's going to be a court-appointed person. It's not going to be some letter. So really, what they're trying to do is, if they call you, they're trying to get you to make a quick decision, confuse you. Just hang up. If you get a letter, usually it's probably fake, or an email. So if you are worried about it, what you would do is call a legitimate source to see if you really do have a lawsuit. You probably don't, but there are numbers you can call. The last one is identity theft. This one is really tricky. Identity theft affects everyone. If it has happened to you, it is a very painful process to get fixed because the credit card companies are not helpful at all, and they almost blame the consumer for theft. It's really a crazy system. If somebody opens a credit card in your name and you had nothing to do with it, somehow you're responsible for getting that fixed, which doesn't make a lot of sense. To me, it should be the credit card companies. They're the ones that have terrible controls, and if they're letting people, if they can't validate who opens up credit, sometimes people legitimately do get their stuff stolen, but a lot of times people can get credit cards with just flimsy information, flimsy applications. But it does happen quite frequently, and there are things you can do. I would urge everybody who is here to get in touch with all of the credit agencies, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and put a hold on your account. Unless you're planning to open up a credit card or have a loan, you just put a hold on it, and if nobody can access your information, they can't open up anything. It's also a good idea to go on there and just check your credit to see if somebody has stolen your identity. And when you're doing that, you just put a block on your account so no one can check it, and you're good to go. It's free. It is free, and you can do it, and you can do it online, which I did. I work for my company is it's American Tire Distributors, but we had a breach a couple of years ago. Somebody social engineered their way into our company and got a person to send the entire payroll register to a spoofed email, which this had everybody's social address. It was everything, salary information, and so what they did, as soon as they did that, I called the IRS and I called all three credit agencies and put fraud alerts out, and then had them shut down the ability for anybody to get onto my accounts. So you do that, nobody's going to steal your stuff. But then the company was cool. They also gave us like a monitoring thing. But those monitoring things are really, they'll tell you if somebody has done something, which is good, but they cost money. You can just do it yourself. You don't need them. You can go to those agencies and just put a block on it, and then you don't even have to worry about it. So anyway, those are the top 10. That's my spiel. And we can end it up for questions if you guys have
Does
any.
anybody have any questions about frauds or anything I could answer?